Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. Throughout this, well, we're heading into summer, late spring, summer, as we head into this gubernatorial race, we're going to be meeting some of the candidates, obviously. Now, on the Republican side, we're not going to meet all of them because I think after the end of May, we're going to see some winnowing of the field, so to speak. But we do know one thing. There is one Democrat for sure in this thing, and that is Fred DuVal. He is a 35-year guy involved in state, federal, and foreign policy. His activities focused on healthcare, education, economic development, natural resources. Fred's been around the block, to put it mildly. I first met you when I was covering Bruce Babbitt as a young reporter in radio back in '83.
Right, and I was a young age.
Right, yeah, you were one of the youngest ever to do what you did. What did you learn from Bruce Babbitt?
Oh, I appreciate those memories. That was the most productive time, I think, really in this century for Arizona. He would set out each year and say, what's the most important strategic thing we have to get done this year? Go to the Republican leadership of the legislature and say, this is it. It's groundwater, Burton Barr. Every July, we'd meet with Burton Barr, you know, and one year it was groundwater, one year it was urban lands, one year it was a Phoenix freeway system, one year it was education funding. 1982-83, it was access.
Right.
Let's decide what's the most important thing we have to do and let all the other secondary issues be, you know, treated as secondary issues so we get the big things done. And every year, big things happen.
And so this would be akin to Gingrich and Clinton working together, although they did it behind the scenes. Correct. They didn't want their sides to know, you know, that they were doing it, but they were doing it nonetheless. Exactly this is you filing, I believe. There you are, yes, heading in as we tape here on Friday. How did this feel to you personally to step up there to the Secretary of State's office, turn in 10,000 signatures? It becomes real, doesn't it?
It becomes very real. But when you're carrying 10,000 signatures of Arizona citizens with you, there's an empowering effect. You know that this isn't about you. This is about a desire for change. It is about a grassroots momentum for a different Arizona and an optimistic Arizona, and to be all that we can be and make sure that we're expanding opportunity, getting better educational outcomes, growing jobs for more Arizonans that have been so badly crushed in the recession, and sensing that I can become the voice for those aspirations is a wonderful feeling.
Do you sometimes think it would be a lot easier if I were a Republican in this state?
Oh, yes and no. Look, Arizona elects Republicans and Democrats. We've elected Democrats 2 of the last 3 governor's races. Now have a majority of the congressional seats. But it's not about R&D. I like to say it's about forward and back. It's about, are we going to turn the corner and go forward? Are we going to really get about this, the important goals of meeting the needs of our Arizona working families? And there's nothing Republican or Democrat about that. I really believe there's a pent-up desire to stop fighting and start fixing. And fixing is about creating a more stable job market because we are still above the national average in unemployment. The jobs we're gaining pay less than the jobs we've lost. A lot of people have been really crushed in this recession and are trying to figure out how do we get going again. Meanwhile, they're watching these cuts in K-12 education where their students are going and seeing their class sizes grow. Teachers aren't staying because salaries aren't sufficient. And folks want to have a sense of optimism that Arizona can have a new day where all of this entrepreneurialism that we have in Arizona and our commitment to our children really manifests in a new government.
And you're a father. You've got a young son, right?
Yes.
2 kids.
Got a 21-year-old and a 5-and-a-half-year-old.
Oh, that's right. You've got a 21-year-old. So you've seen this kind of on both sides. We've got young kids, and this education thing is really, it's interesting, it's troubling. And I'm not positive that throwing money at it is the fix. I don't know what the fix is. Let me get your take, first of all, on what you think the benefit or the harm has been from school choice in the state. Charter schools.
Yes. Charter schools are a net value to creating innovation, new options for parents. There are great charter schools and there are bad charter schools we've got to have the courage to close. There are great public schools and there are bad public schools we've got to have the courage to close. What I think this is really about is making sure that both systems have the resources they need to do their job, pay good teachers, but it needs to be around tough accountability. Schools have to be held accountable for better results. Students have to be held accountable. Parents have to be held accountable. So it's not just throwing money at a problem, it's using public investment to achieve better outcomes and better opportunities.
Do you think we've leaned too much on overrides in districts to try to bridge funding from the state?
Oh, sure. These schools are absolutely at the breaking point. And where we really see it, and it's not We're not going to have a Sputnik moment because this happens slowly and all the time. Teachers not staying, good teachers not staying, and when you have a
are they going to charter schools?
Some, but many are picking other disciplines. And when you lose good teachers, whether you be a charter family or a traditional school family, it won't matter. The gift, the magic occurs at the front of the classroom, and we've got to recruit and inspire and assure that good, smart students go into teaching and stay in teaching for the benefit of our kids.
Do you believe, a lot of discussion about Common Core, are you a supporter or not?
Yes.
You are. There has to be a test, a measure to know where we are globally.
That's exactly right. We're competing against kids from all over the world, and we need benchmarks, not curriculum. This is about standards, benchmarks to compare how we're doing as a way to create a sense of urgency. You know, I am really mindful. These aren't Washington, D.C. driven policies. This isn't about the federal government. This is about a group of school folks around the United States, the Gates Foundation, people that are really on the ground helping us to raise the standards and then apply them in a way that gives us the metrics so that we know what performance is working, what's not, and how to make sure that we incent every school to be the best they can be.
Do you think that what's happened in the schools, a lot of this goes back to what's happening at home? Families dissolving, families, you'd call it the nuclear family, whatever it is, that the kids, the primary way they learn is really at home. That's a key. And now we've asked the schools to become parent, disciplinarian, safety net, everything. We're asking, I think, too much of the schools. There's too much of a burden upon them to fix what maybe is happening at home.
It's certainly an ingredient. That is one. Funding is two. In the aggregate, we have cut school funding in Arizona deeper than any state in the United States. And although money isn't always just the solution, poverty is the problem to a great extent. So you've got to use money to get back to better results. And then third, it's really in this accountability to incent better results. And what is increasingly—
Does that mean teacher performance as well?
Teacher performance as well, but I'll tell you what's really happening, and it really worries me, is that increasingly we are dictating students opportunities in life based upon their zip code, not based upon their talent. And that's just wrong. And we can't succeed with that model. We've got to make sure that every child, no matter where they start in life, has the potential to really manifest their talents to the fullest extent.
You ran for Congress, was it 2002?
Yes.
2002, you were a candidate in the 1st Congressional District. That's northern Arizona, really, that Flagstaff area.
Right.
But it's a huge, massive district. You lost that race.
Yes.
What did you learn?
Oh, I learned a number of things. One, you've got to pick the race that fits who you are at the moment. I really feel the difference. I am ready to be governor. I know why I want to do this job. I know what I want to accomplish as governor. Really thought it through. And secondly, I really understood that you've got to get to know the real dynamics at the dining room table, in the living rooms, what's going on with families. It can't just be, you know, a 10-point plan that you've arrived at by thinking about what works.
Or testing it.
That's right, or testing it. This is really about the human experience. What's happening with people's real lives? Where are they finding opportunities? Where are they're being challenged? How is the economy impacting them? What choices are they being forced to make? And government is the solution to all of this, but government can create an environment for success, and a governor can set an expectation for better performance and more hope that we can turn the corner and provide better outcomes.
You must have consulted with Bruce Babbitt about this and talked to him about it. What did he tell you, and what's the best advice he gave you?
He said, first, this is the right race for you at the right time. You are ready to be governor. You've worked with governors all across the country in your work at the White House. You were working with me at a time when we got a lot of things done. Your work with President Clinton, implementing welfare reform in all 50 states, shows your ability to work and collaborate with Republicans and Democrats.
That was some accomplishment, considering a Democrat did that.
It was a big deal. And then I came back to the Board of Regents, and I was put on the Board of Regents at just the time that the Arizona legislature took $500 million out of higher education. And it was—
great timing.
It was chaos. And people said, we've got to close campuses. And I said, no, we're not.
I remember
that
discussion. Yeah.
It was really rough. And it took a lot of cuts. It took some tuition increases. It took a new design for financial aid to make sure that gifted students would still have the opportunity to come. And most importantly, I set about to redesign higher education. We now created a new program, which I led, called ArizonaTransfer.com. And I hope listeners will remember that, ArizonaTransfer.com. It allows students to go online and take courses from universities and community colleges all working towards their degree at a lower price point at their schedule. And as a result, I produced the first zero tuition increase in Arizona history. It's about change. It's about leadership.
That's a great idea, because obviously we're burdening. I think it's a huge, huge issue, and my fear is the taxpayers are going to end up on the hook for the student loan debt, which is now $1 trillion nationwide.
Right.
It's a huge
Absolutely.
deal. Let me go through it. You ticked off a couple of them, and so for people who don't know Fred DuVal, let's see. You went to U of A briefly. You went to Occidental College.
That's right.
That's where you met Grant Woods there.
I met him briefly in high school in student government circles, but then met him at college at Occidental.
Okay. Grant Woods was on this program about a month ago. He endorsed you for governor. Of course, he's a Republican. Right. Some would say he's a rhino. Nonetheless, he endorsed you, and you gladly accept, I'm sure.
I did, and Barry Goldwater's grandkids have endorsed me.
There
I've got
you go.
A broad arc.
Okay. So then you go to law school at ASU. You get out, you work during that time, you're working for Bruce Babbitt, right?
That's right.
Okay, after that, what happens to you?
I go to work in the governor's office.
Right.
I become his legislative liaison, working between the executive branch and the legislative branch from about...
You ran his re-election. You're the youngest guy to ever do that at a gubernatorial race.
That's right.
You were 24 years old running Bruce Babbitt's re-election campaign.
That's right. That's right. That was 1982, and a successful re-election. I finished out most of his second term, and then managed his campaign for president, which was a very brief effort.
What did you learn from that?
Oh, the power of ideas. That, you know, this isn't just about cranking out machinery of campaigns, but that people want to be inspired by vision and hope. And we learned a lot from that. And in losing, you know, it's important that you make the race. There was a long shot, to be
totally.
sure.
And he was one of the first politicians, I believe, to raise his hand and say, I smoke marijuana. Isn't that correct?
He did. Yes,
he did that. I mean, at that time, that was, wow.
Yes.
You're kidding me. A politician is going to admit to this. Yeah. I mean, it's a changing world, obviously, but back then that was a big deal.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
But you got to
right.
praise him for his honesty.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it was a great experience for all of us. We finished that term. I went into private business for a number of years before being tapped to go to the White House that we've talked about, where I was there for 7 years. And then I came home and returned to a private business, which I've been in for about 12 years as a private businessman. And
this is a clean energy fuels?
Well, I started out in my own consulting work as a small businessman.
Right.
And then I got this most unlikely call from a guy who many of the listeners will know, T. Boone Pickens, who's an oil man from Texas. And he said, look, I have this idea. I'm a Republican, I'm an oil guy, but I think it's time for America to get off foreign oil. We're borrowing from China to pay both sides of the war. We've got to get on American energy sources. I need somebody who can help articulate a strategy and articulate a message for how we can get Americans involved in clean energy fuels. We did that. We saw him on TV all around the United States. And then it has grown into a new relationship with clean energy fuels. And what we're doing is we're building fuel bays across the United States for heavy-duty trucks so that they can refuel on clean American natural gas rather than on foreign petroleum. It's cleaner, it's cheaper, and it's American.
It's abundant.
And it's abundant. It's a game changer.
It is potentially a game changer. We'll get to that when we come back with Fred DuVal, who is the one candidate we know on the Democratic side who's in. Will there be another? And what does he think of the Republican field, and how would he grade Governor Brewer, given that she came in at a very difficult spot in Arizona? We'll talk to Fred DuVal about it. The Democratic candidate for governor who just filed 10,000 petitions at the Secretary of State's office Friday. Back in a moment with Fred DuVal. Back on Newsmaker Sunday with Fred DuVal. He is the Democratic candidate for governor of Arizona. Are you used to that when somebody says that now?
I'm getting used to it.
Is it humbling in a way?
Oh, absolutely. Enormously so. I mean, you know, this is really about representing the hopes and aspirations of citizens who want more out of their lives, want more for their kids.
Do you have enough of an ego for this? You're not a big ego guy.
Yeah, I appreciate your saying that. I know why I want to be governor. I've thought it through for years. I really thought, is this the right time for my ideas, for my approach? I think Arizona is eager for collaboration, eager to get the big things right. They're eager for a change in our course direction. Did
you not say that your key priorities are child protection, education, and good government?
Yes.
Those are your priorities. You said that in an Arizona Star editorial.
Yes. It's about mostly about talent. When you have 6,500 kids whose calls don't get answered, you're losing talent. When we are underfunding education, we're losing talent. That's the critical need for the next century.
Let's run tape number 2. The Arizona legislature. If you were to be elected, you would be dealing still, probably primarily, with a Republican legislature that might be very opposed to what you were trying to do, especially in the area of spending and more spending. Mm-hmm. Who do you reach out to over there? Who would be your people you could deal with over there?
There are going to be partners. Everything I've done in my life has been reaching into a partnership and collaboration. In the governor's office, as you mentioned, Burt Barr, Bob Usdane, a lot of good leaders.
But that's a different era.
It was. You know, the Clinton working relationship that we had with Newt Gingrich, my working relationship with 50 governors, and the Board of Regents, completely bipartisan. Here's what I believe about people in public life. Most of them have a good heart, a good intention. They want their engagement in public life to mean something. They want to improve the state of Arizona. I absolutely believe that. But what's happened is that folks have sort of, they get in their own camps. The R's and
Everybody's
D's,
gone to their corner.
They've gone to their corner. And no one is reaching out and saying, how do we work together? How do we identify the things that really matter and find some common ground?
So aside from Bruce Babbitt, who taught you how to do that? Who did you watch and say, it must be Clinton?
Oh, sure.
Okay, that was the guy.
Sure. Sure.
You worked in the protocol office.
I started in protocol, and then I ended up in what's called intergovernmental, which deals with the 50 governors.
Okay, now protocol is an odd thing.
Yes,
you were
yes.
setting up state dinners and doing all of this kind of very interesting job.
I did. I hosted the heads of government from all over the world for 3 years.
So you'd organize state dinners. Is that essentially what you would do?
You know, my job really was to host them. There was a team that organizes all the events and so forth. My job was to develop the relationship with the individual king, queen, prime minister, president, whatever, whoever it was. What are their needs? How do we make sure that we are attentive to making sure their agenda gets properly addressed? How do we create an ambiance for successful diplomacy? How do we develop a relationship that's trusting?
Okay. What did it teach you?
To listen, to understand that, you know, that people start from different places, but they want to get to a good place. They want to be productive. They want their time in public life to have meaning, and it's true of friends as well as folks with whom we have big differences. And when it's the United States, you know, we are a powerful country. We're the most important country in the world, and folks want us to succeed, and they want to have a relationship with us. And it reminds me that people want to have relationships. They want to collaborate. They want their work to be meaningful.
On that score, let's talk about leadership for a minute. And I want to run video, tape number 7 of Governor Brewer. I saw you interviewed recently, and you were not particularly critical of her. I didn't know what I would hear from you on the answer of how is she done, how would you scorecard her. I think we all recognize she was in a tight spot. She did some things even for her own party were very dicey to even attempt to raise taxes, for instance, for a Republican governor.
Right.
What do you think? How do you think she's done?
Very mixed, and I want to praise her and well as draw lines in the sand where I strongly disagree.
Okay. This will help voters understand where you come from.
Absolutely, and I judge it on the merits, not on the politics. This is not a D or an R answer. This is, I really think, in terms of the strategic things that Arizona needed to do. I think she got 1070 wrong. I think we sat too long for a week and watched Arizona be bandied about and become a national spectacle over 1062 and the discrimination bill. These were really bad calls.
Divisive and not good for the state, you think?
And not good for the state.
Okay.
And letting it sit made it appear as though it was a close call, and it wasn't. It wasn't. It needed to be dealt with immediately. At the same time, her leadership on Prop 100, when we were facing those enormous cuts, deep stabilizing cuts to education, showed me a bipartisan leadership. Recently, the fight for Medicaid expansion to assure that hundreds of thousands, really more than a million Arizonans have access to health care paid for by federal, largely by federal dollars. She had to take on her own party to do that. That's where leadership occurs. Leadership occurs with your willingness to call out bad actors, whether they be Republican or Democrat, to get the big strategic things right. And in these instances, she's done that.
Let's talk a little bit about CPS. What a nightmare. Find out that 6,500 allegations of child abuse and neglect were not investigated. They were just shoved under the table. They're fixing it now. Yes. But when you heard that, what was your reaction, and what would have been your fix had you been governor?
Oh, it just made my stomach hurt, like anyone's.
Here are the 5. We're looking at the 5 people who got bounced. And they were saying, look, we were in a no-win situation. We didn't have the money or the resources to do these cases. Is that good enough for you or not?
No. Look, whistles don't cost very much. You know, it was time to bring this public. And if you're going to be in public service, you've got public responsibilities. And whether it be these 5 or the department head, who I don't understand why he's still there, they had an obligation to say, look, understand...
Clarence Carter, you're speaking of.
Understand the degree to which this has been growing for years. It has hit critical mass, and we've resorted to this unthinkable remedy of simply putting the files aside while 6,500 children, our calls for help are being unanswered. It was unthinkable. What would I have done? Immediately made the move to the separate agency to create more.
You like that move?
Absolutely. She called that one right.
I think he's very sharp, the new head of that.
As do I.
Yeah,
Good things.
good guy.
The second thing is to recognize that this is about law enforcement and it's about the accountability, but it's a lot about prevention. And we've walked away from child support subsidies, daycare, some of the things that are safety nets for families that are facing severe economic stress. And we've walked away from many of those opportunities.
Time check, Steph. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Sure.
We need to break? Okay, we're going to break with Fred DuVal, the Democratic candidate for governor of Arizona. Back in a minute. When we come back, is Arizona relying too much on, well, we've kept property taxes low, but has that been a good idea? Do we need to rethink how we're structuring taxes in the state? We're going to talk about it with Fred DuVal when we come back. Back with the Democratic candidate for governor of Arizona. He is the only one on the Democratic side who's in and turned in 10,000 signatures on Friday. Fred DuVal, who's been around the state a long time, started with Governor Babbitt, ended up in the Clinton White House, ran for Congress in 2002 out of District 1 in northern Arizona and lost. But Board of Regents, you were the head of the Board of Regents.
Yes, right.
Let me ask you, we raised a question before the break. And I think it's an ode to the retirees to try to keep property taxes down. But have we gotten out of balance on our tax structure in the state, how we fund what we want to do? Child care, child protection, education, all these things that we hold dear. The funding formula, what do you say?
That we have reduced taxes in Arizona 22 of the last 23 years. We have now all tax forms among the lowest taxes in the United States on a per citizen basis. So we've gotten very competitive on taxes. And I'm a pro-business guy. I want to grow business. Employers mean employees.
So that means no tax on business.
So I'm not big on new taxes, but the second part of the equation is you can compete on lowering taxes, but unless you have good workforce and talented, skilled workers who can compete with anybody in the rest of the world, it won't matter. And we have gotten out of balance in that regard. And we've got to, as our economy grows, the debate will be, should we continue to lower taxes or should we get back into investing in education?
So which taxes do you see that are ripe to raise?
No, I said I don't think we need to raise taxes. The economy is going to start to grow, and as it does, we will have the debate. Should we continue to lower taxes? And a lot of the other candidates running, the Republicans running for governor, want to reduce the income tax.
Or do away with it.
Or do away with it completely, which is a third of the state budget, which means closing thousands of schools.
How do these states like Texas and Oregon who don't have a state tax do it?
Energy. Energy export states have other ways of generating revenue.
Is there anything we could do? Is there something?
Looking at some options, and I want to definitely see what else we can do to become more competitive and have a more stable platform with the budget. But the number one goal, if we want to be competitive, it is about low taxes, efficient regulatory and low regulatory standards that are competitive, and getting back into workforce so that we've got the kind of employees that our businesses need to thrive.
We've got about 45 seconds. I want to kind of give you the floor for a minute. What would you want voters to know about Fred DuVal? And what moves you to be in this race?
Opportunity. Arizona, what I love about Arizona, it is the most entrepreneurial, free state. You are free to make any opportunity.
Make it or crash and burn.
Make it or crash and burn. That is a great piece of our DNA as a state. But too many of our citizens don't have that kind of opportunity. We've shut too many doors. We've got gifted people who can do so much more, but they've been crushed by the recession. Their kids are being crushed by the cuts in schools. They don't have the kind of jobs that they need, and we can turn that around. It's in us in Arizona.
15 seconds. Who do you think you're going to face in November?
A Republican, and I don't know who.
Well, we know that, right? Right? Fred DuVal, good to see you.
Good to see
and
you.
Best of luck to you. It's
Thank
great
you
to see
very
you again.
much.
Great to catch up with you
Likewise.
again. And we will have you back in the program and maybe even a debate here if you're up for it.
Terrific.
At some point.
I welcome it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Fred DuVal, our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. Thanks for spending part of your day with us, and we will see you next week on Newsmaker Sunday.